Hello, and welcome to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psyche Highway podcast. That's right. Your host and tour guide is Scott Prevet, a healer, hypnotist, and a magician. And your bus driver is Jason Gobelli, also hypnotist, an entrepreneur, and a spiritual guide. Disclaimer, neither Jason, Scott, or any of our guests here today are licensed professional psychologists or psychiatrists. So please don't make any changes to any medication or treatments that you are currently on based on the conversation that you hear here today. Just hop on the bus and enjoy the ride. Trip with us on the Inner Revelation bus. That's right.
Hi, I'm Jason. Welcome back to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psychic Highway. We are excited today. We got a great guest, don't we, Scott?
Heck yeah, we got the great Kevin Moran on the show today.
That's right, Kevin. Kevin, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to see you guys.
Oh, wonderful, Kevin.
Absolutely.
Let's get the party started, man. Let's get rolling. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm a hypnotherapist and coach. I work with all kinds of different issues. I especially work with insomnia and sleep issues. I also do emotional wellness coaching, which involves working with doing multiple sessions early on, and then they can see me for an extended period. But I especially work with sexual trauma, as well as sexual issues in general. I also work with porn addiction. With sexual trauma, to go even deeper into that, I work with men who have been sexually assaulted by women as adults.
Nice. Well, it seems like you got a lot of different things you go, Kevin. So tell us a little bit about these things. I mean, some clients that you have or some things that you've done. What do you find? What guides you to do what you do?
Well, I have had some past experiences that motivated me to work with men who have been in that experience. And it's something that nobody in our society talks about. It's something that is more common than people realize, but it's not commonly talked about. And I think it's important that as a society that we acknowledge that it happens, as well as people within the mental health industry know and understand what it's like to work with those sort of clients, that they deal with a lot of the same, they are often in the same situation as women who go through that. But men have even greater challenges when it comes to not being believed or being shamed or even the fear of being disbelieved or ridiculed. Because as far as people know, men, or as far as people say, oh no, men can't be assaulted by women. It doesn't happen. But it does. It really does. I've also inspired to work with people, helping them with confidence as well, whether it's tied to that issue or often with learning disabilities or having a limiting belief that they're not able to learn fast. Sometimes they're often told as kids or even as adults that they're a slow learner. And it's about letting go of that limiting belief that they are better than they think they are because of what other people have fed to them when they were younger.
So do you find these things all connected, Kevin? I mean, like we're talking about not being able to sleep well. We're talking about learning disabilities. We're talking about sexual issues. I mean, is it all tied together?
Yes, it is like peeling back layers of an onion. In my own personal experiences on the receiving end of hypnotherapy, it was never just a one undone, a one undone working on all of these issues. It was working on different issues with different practitioners. And ultimately, one process that helped me work on a lot of those issues at the same time was the bunny talk process with Claudia Ricard, which I now practice myself as a bunny talk practitioner.
Nice.
Awesome.
Wonderful. So you said it's like peeling back an onion. That's an interesting metaphor because that often causes tears. So do you find that you go through a lot of that with your practice?
Sometimes there can be tears and there can be emotion that can be released in other ways. It can be yelling, cursing, or just deep breaths. Sometimes even yawning is a way of letting out tension in the body because it relaxes the muscles. So even when someone starts yawning, that's a release.
Oh, well, it definitely has an effect on me when they start yawning during the podcast. I can tell you that.
Of course.
Anyway, Kevin, so let's talk about you for a second here. So when was it that you had this moment where you were like, man, you know what? I'm going to be able to help people. You know, this moment when you thought this was your calling.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely happy to share that. And then I can share that with a follow-up story that a lot of people don't know about. The one that inspired me to become a hypnotherapist happened during a week of in-person training with Mike Mandel. There was another attendee there named Olga Tarrant, and on the last day of the training, she and I did a coaching session in the hotel lobby, and that allowed me to let go of the limiting belief that I was a slow learner, flipped it around, and gave me the belief that I was a fast learner. And that inspired me to become a hypnotherapist myself. And the amount of time, energy that I invested towards becoming a hypnotherapist, about the equivalent of taking a full course load at college, all that while working 40 hours, along with the other things I have going on in my life. And that many people, both inside and outside the hypnotist community, have heard that story. But I want to talk about what inspired me to pursue hypnosis in general, and even created my interest in hypnosis altogether. What happened with Olga was only the second time, not the first time, that I had my first hypnotic experience in my first hypnotherapy session, really, when I was very young, probably about 12 years old. I had my first hypnotherapy session by accident when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. I remember back in the 70s, do you remember they always had a ton of disaster movies? And there were some that had killer bees in it. At an age that young, when the unconscious mind is still very impressionable by what we see on TV, we may see something like that. And just like that, develop a phobia for something that we see on TV. And I wound up with a fear of bees and a fear of being stung. And in the years following that, I had a fear of any kind of bee. So one day, when I was around 12 years old, I went to hang out in the town green of the house, the town where I lived, went and sat on the common with some of my friends. And then there were these two girls there just by themselves playing sensory games, hypnosis games, things that girls play, light as a feather, stiff as a board, that whole thing. And I was invited over. I watched one of the girls hypnotize the other girl with some sort of game involving rubbing their temples. I wasn't quite sure what it was at the time. I didn't recognize it as hypnosis. And then she invited to do something with me. So I'm sitting on the grass, cross-legged, and she starts doing this children's sensory nursery rhyme. I think it's called Crack the Egg on the Head. I think that's what it's called. And it has these very, let's call them spooky words in it. But I had noticed that in the grass, not close by, but maybe a little bit away, there were dandelions, there were flowers, and there were bees around, but we also had hornets too in the grass. And so she had me sitting cross-legged in the grass, and she starts reciting this nursery rhyme, and in a very soothing voice, and she starts running her fingers up and down my back, all while saying that nursery rhyme. And I recall being very relaxed at that time, and knowing what I know now, I was in a full-blown trance state. So while she was doing that, I felt a sensation on my hand, on my right hand. And even though my eyes were closed, and I could tell just from the sensation that was a hornet crawling across my hand. But by this point, I was in such a relaxed, trance-like state, didn't respond to it, didn't have any fear, didn't move a muscle. I was at a point of indifference. And that's the essence of what we strive for in hypnotherapy. And from that point on, when it was all over, never got stung. I never had a fear of hornets after that, or bees in general. And this girl who did the work on me, she had no idea what she had done. She had done a hypnotherapy session, didn't even realize it. And I never saw her again after that. You know, the universe, I suppose, just sent this random girl, 2 ships passing the night, did a hypnotherapy session on me, and I also didn't have that phobia anymore. Rewired the neural pathways, not being afraid of bees. So that was my first experience with hypnosis. And that was what sparked my interest in hypnosis in general. And then many years later, at the age of 38, I had my second hypnotic experience with Olga, and that inspired me to go a step further and pursue hypnotherapy and helping people.
Well, it sounds like the universe probably brought that hornet your way too there, Kevin.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
So this is interesting. So you said you had that experience with Olga, but it was at a Mike Mandel thing. So that meant that you went to Mike Mandel to actually meet Olga. So what brought up that whole scenario for you even to want to go there in the first place?
To go to my training with Mike Mandel?
Yes, even before you met Olga, what brought that all into play? Where does that come from?
Well, I had been interested. I had been doing hypnosis for a while as an adult for fun with people that I knew. But after a breakup a few years ago, I was in a very low place. And often we turn our lives around when we're at our lowest point. And after about 6 months of self-loathing, I had some paid time off that I needed to burn. So I went down to Boston to have a long weekend, to just have some me time. And on the very last night, I stopped by a brewery on the way back to my hotel just to have a couple of rounds and then call it a night. And I was halfway through my first beer. And then all of a sudden, that's when all of the emotion came out. 6 months later. And it was after about 20 minutes, I got it out of my system. I went back to my hotel. I went home. And I went home feeling really motivated. And I said, and this was right around Christmas, I said, you know what, this coming year, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do stuff to completely turn my life around. And among other things that I did that year, such as taking up Krav Maga, which is the Israeli martial art, becoming a Freemason, the very first thing I did is I went on Google and I said, you know what, I've been doing hypnosis a long time, you know, free material, YouTube, self-taught, but I want to take some real actual hypnosis training, preferably in person. So I put in a Google search and Mike Mandel was the first name that came up on page 1. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And later that spring, I went and attended that week-long event, and my life completely changed after that.
Well, it sounds like the universe brought you that too.
I've been getting a lot from the universe these days.
So you've been dabbling in this for a while then. So all through your life, I'm sure you've had plenty of mentors. So who are some of those mentors and who do you look up to?
Oh, geez. I have. I'm one of those people who believes in having multiple mentors. No one person is going to have all the answers. I have some outside of hypnosis. I have my SCORE mentor who helps me with the business side of things. I have people that I turn to for questions about social media. Within hypnosis, I've gone on to study with different practitioners and trainers. I've trained with Kaz Riley. I've trained with Richard Hill. I've trained with James Tripp. I look up to them, all of them. Olga has recently become my coach, so I have her doing that with me now. But I would probably single out Mike Mandel as my primary mentor, my first mentor. I've always, as a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist in my practice in general, I view it as the building of a house. And that concrete foundation that the rest of the house sits on is Mike Mandel and his Hypnosis Academy. So I look to him as my first influence, my first mentor, the source of my foundational learning.
Well, it sounds like you got a lot going on over the place. So what's with this? You said you're working 40 hours a week. Is that going to be a thing of the past soon, or what's the plan with that?
The plan is eventually to leave that behind and go full-time with hypnosis. But as of right now, I'm quite happy where it is because it not only pays the bills, it pays well. I have a boss that is very supportive of my hypnotic journey to the point that he actually lets me work at home more often so I can take on more clients. Not a lot of bosses will do that. But it also gives me a chance to experiment with my business, get settled in running the business, taking more risks while working with that financial safety net. And I can go to conferences too without the whole cost benefit question of, oh, are you doing a talk, Kevin? No, I'm just here to network and learn and enjoy myself. And it's a lot of hard work. It's very busy. It's not a lot of free time, juggling running a business and working 40 hours, but it's also an opportunity to do some things professionally that would have been much harder if I was doing hypnosis full time. But that is the end goal.
So, Kevin, do you have a talk in you?
Yes, I do. And I've got a few ideas, but I can say right now that my first talk, when the time is right, will be related to the issue of working with men who have been sexually assaulted.
So that seems to be your number one niche right now.
That's right.
Nice. Scott, I've been hogging the whole show. Come on, Scott, you want to throw out a question here?
So, Kevin, you've got this thing going with Claudia Rickard, the bunny process. We know what that is because we've had Claudia on the show, but could you explain that to our viewers a little bit, what that is and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bunny talk process was something created by her using many other techniques already in existence. And it was created with working with kids, but it works just as well for teens and adults. And it gives us an opportunity to literally draw our emotions onto a piece of paper. If it's in person, it's a full body drawing outline with a Sharpie. If it's on Zoom, it's with almost kind of like a gingerbread man drawing. Literally taking colored markers and drawing how we feel with colors, shapes, even writing words, and then using eye movements to alleviate those negative emotions, giving them positive emotions, and even playing with any toys or action figures to act out stories. And it's just a very unique, very fun healing process and a way of working with clients. And as an adult, it allows us to tap into our inner child.
Nice.
Cool.
So
Do you plan on working?
Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, sorry. So, Kevin, do you plan on in the future? Where do you expect to be in 10 years? Do you expect to be with your own business with a thriving practice, or do you still plan on having both those jobs? I know Jason kind of covered it, but
well, I do plan on having both jobs for as long as I need to. When the time comes to go full time with hypnosis, it's going to be purely a financial decision. if it was up to me, I would go full time with hypnosis tomorrow, but it's still early. So I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 years of doing it part time, but that's not a hard goal. It's when everything is right where it should be, then it will be time to make that leap.
Sure.
So let's delve down your road a little bit here more, Kevin. So what is your I know your niche, but what is your unique presence that you can bring to this, that you use to bring this together and help people heal from what they do through? What direction do you do that, and what do you do that makes you the expert in that field, where where it's your unique thing, that you have a method or a plan to help assist people get through what they're going through?
To work in my niche?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's about offering a safe space, and also a lot of people who have been through this sort of trauma of any gender, but especially men, are not inclined to open up right away about it. So it's about giving them plenty of space to be who they are and be comfortable and know that they're in a non-judgmental space. And there are times where they need time to just open up and tell their story for the first time. Many of them have no one to go to. They've never told their story. I remember when I opened up for the first time about it. It was hard, but it reminds me, when working with someone who's been with had these sort of issues. Have either of you ever seen the final episode of MASH, the old TV show? No. Okay. In the final episode, Hawkeye is in a military hospital. He had a mental breakdown. He's sitting with the doctor, and over the course of working together, an old memory pops up that Hawkeye was traumatized by, and it was the famous "it wasn't a chicken, it was a baby" scene. And after he completely breaks down and lets it out, he says to the doctor, "You son of a bitch, why did you make me remember that?" And the doctor says, "You had to get it out in the open. Now we're halfway home." And that's really what the essence is of working with this, is giving them plenty of space for them to let it out, and then we can begin the work.
And yet this seems so contradictory to society. An example, like, the young boy with the teacher fantasy happens, and the kid has that thing with let's say there's a young boy, and he's got the young teacher. A lot of guys have the crush on the teacher, and something happens, and all of a sudden the boy feels different about it because of what had happened with the teacher. But the other kids would be like, "Oh man, you rock, you're the man," stuff like that. What kind of play does that have on the emotions?
When something like that happens, and I think we're touching on, there's some cases in the past that were well publicized. I think it was a teacher, I think her last name was Letourneau. And she, I think, got into a relationship with a boy who was 13 years old. And a lot of people in our society were applauding him, like, "Oh, yeah, he got this hot blonde teacher." And eventually they got married, but she was taking advantage of him. And it can be very confusing to a child because they get praise from other boys, like, "Oh, you got laid," or "you got some action from a woman." And that happens if that person was a child or as an adult, and they're very confused about it. They get caught up they start to believe it themselves. They believe the myth too, that maybe it wasn't what it was. Maybe it is supposed to be that way, but it isn't.
Right. So that's kind of what I was talking about, because sometimes, especially with men, society will praise them for that. Like, "Hey, this is what you weren't taken advantage of. You're the man," type of thing. So
exactly. People don't seem to
understand
understand that women can behave badly too. And just because A man doesn't say no doesn't necessarily imply consent.
Nice, nice. Scott, you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, Kevin, we just really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and coming here and seeing us and spending time with us.
Kevin, how do our viewers get a hold of you?
Viewers can get a hold of me by going to my website, acadianrock.com, as in Acadia National Park. That's what it references to, at acadianrock.com. And they can book a session with me. All the information is right there, including video content where they can get to know more about me and some of the clients that I've worked with in the past. And it's a very simple process.
So you are just doing individual, or are you doing groups as well?
At the moment, I'm only doing one-on-one sessions, but there may be group sessions in the long run.
Nice, nice. Okay, and when you do group sessions, I'm sure you're not going to be able to do anything that has to do with the sexual stuff, because that's, of course, a lot more intimate. So do you have an idea of what you're going to do with your group sessions?
Well, that is still something that is coming together. Like everything in my practice, it's a slow burn. And I'm always getting these new ideas of things that I want to do with my practice, but often they have to be put on the back burner until I have time to put them into action, to fully flesh them out, these ideas. And it's just like everything I've ever done, never not doing something, but it's one thing at a time.
Nice, nice. Now, Kevin, one more thing here. Well, actually, a couple more things. I'm just going to add something. So you got this thing you're working on, and that you said nobody's talking about is your big thing. Is there a book on the horizon on that?
It's funny you say that. I did go on ChatGPT once to find out if there is a book out there in existence about the subject, and there isn't. Now, there are some books out there that briefly mention that, but it's not really addressed at all. In fact, the one book that at least as far as ChatGPT is concerned, that comes the closest is a book that was, I think, released in 1990 called Victims No More. And I'm currently listening to that on audiobook. And it's about a guidebook for men who were sexually abused as children. It's presented in the second person. So when I'm listening to the narration, it's using you, as in you, the reader. And it's allows me in that moment when listening to it to put myself into that position while I was never sexually abused as a child. It gives some real insight and educational value in understanding what it is to be that kind of person if they were a client who has been through that. And yet that book does not devote much time at all to the very thing that I focus on. So the bottom line is, no, there are no books in existence. And that definitely gave me an idea of something that may be in the pipeline.
Well, speaking of maybe when, the question is when. Do you have an idea of when you can have
It's
that?
not a matter of if,
Scott?
only when, Jason.
Yeah, because I'm sure if it needs to be done, the public's waiting for it. The big question is, when can we expect you to do it? Because it seems to be like you're the man with the calling, right?
That's right. I am the one with the calling, and I just might be the person who is going to make that change and make sure that people need to know about this. And if I have to be the one who's going to write the book on it, then that's what I'm going to do.
Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing that soon there, Kevin.
So do I.
Okay, let's give you the big question. You know the big question. What are your words of wisdom for our viewers?
There is no shame in reaching out. There is no shame in reaching out for help, whether it's from a therapy standpoint or just seeking out advice, or whether it's personal or professional. It is a matter of strength to seek out help, because there are experts who are willing more than willing to help you. So don't try to take on all the weight on your own shoulders. It's okay to reach out to others when you need some help.
Nice. Nice. Scott, anything you want to add?
Kevin, thank you so much for coming in and seeing us. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you for taking the time.
Kevin, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, for our viewers out there, we're glad you came. We certainly hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe. If you like us, give us the thumbs up. If you think we're assholes, just give us a thumbs down. We don't care. We're just glad you're here. We hope you come back, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming.
Wow, what a trip. Thanks for taking that journey with us today. Please like us, share us, and enlighten us with your views of the topics we drove into today. We appreciate you and love reading your comments. Thanks again, and we hope to see you back on the bus next week. That's right.